William Sterling Blair PCCom MP is a Canadian politician, currently serving as Canada's Minister of Public Safety and as a Member of Parliament representing the Federal Electoral District of Scarborough Southwest, formerly serving as Minister of Border Security and Organised Crime Reduction. Blair was appointed Minister of Public Safety on 20 November 2019. Before federal politics, he served as the Chief of the Toronto Police Service from 2005 until his 25 April 2015 retirement. Prior to his time as chief, Blair had a 3-decade-long career in the service. Blair was born April 9, 1954 in Scarborough, Ontario. Blair's father had served as a police officer for 39 years. Blair considered pursuing a degree in law or finance. When he initially enrolled at the University of Toronto Scarborough in the mid-1970s, Blair initially studied economics at the University of Toronto. He left to follow his ambition of being a police officer, but returned later and completed a Bachelor of Arts in Economics and Criminology. Blair is married to Susan McMaster, who share 3 grown children and 2 grandchildren. Blair joined the Toronto Police Service while in university to make money and began taking courses on a part-time basis. Blair walked a beat near Regent Park and later worked as an undercover officer in Toronto's drug squad. After Blair earned his bachelor's degree in criminology, he advanced his career in the police service in the late 1980s, taking part in drug busts involving the seizure of millions of dollars of cocaine. Chief David Boothby assigned Blair to improve the poor community relations between the officers of 51 Division, which patrolled Blair's old beat near Regent Park. Blair normalized police relations with the community by measures such as sending cops to read to kids in local elementary schools and engaging with local businesses and churches. In 1999, Blair was considered as a candidate to replace outgoing Chief Boothby, but Mayor Mel Lastman, with the support of Premier Mike Harris, chose to hire Julian Fantino, then head of the York Regional Police. After reorganization of the senior ranks after Fantino's ascension as police chief, Blair became head of detective operations. Blair was selected in a 4-2 vote of the Toronto Police Services Board in early April 2005, and formally appointed Chief of the Toronto Police Service on April 26, 2005. He succeeded Mike Boyd, who had served as interim chief after the expiry of Julian Fantino's contract. Prior to his appointment as chief, Blair worked for approximately 30 years as a Toronto police officer, with assignments involving drug enforcement, organized crime and major criminal investigations. Blair served as president of the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police. In the spring of 2009, Tamil Canadians in Toronto upset by civilian deaths in the Sri Lanka Civil War, which included an overnight artillery bombardment that killed 378 civilians and wounded 1,100, allegedly perpetrated by government forces, staged a series of protests in Toronto, including shutting down the northbound and southbound lanes of University Avenue for 4 days, while protesting in front of the U.S. consulate, and illegally blocking traffic on the Gardner Expressway. Blair and the police faced pressure to crack down on the demonstrations, arrest and deporting the protesters. Instead, Blair used his experience in community policing to ensure that minimal force was used. spoke respectfully of the protesters' rights to expression, and negotiated the peaceful resolution of the events. The Canadian Tamil Congress would later award Blair an inaugural Leaders for Change Award for his leadership during the protests. At a rally on 28 June 2010, protesters called for Blair's resignation. Regarding the detention of nearly 1,000 people during the 2010 G20 Toronto Summit protests. In a December 2010 interview, Blair indicated that he would not resign, despite growing criticism of his leadership during and after the summit. Responding to questions about a controversial regulation enacted by the Cabinet of Ontario to increase police powers during the summit, Blair was supportive, stating that, "It was passed in exactly the procedure as described in our legislation in Ontario." Post-summit reports revealed that on June 25, prior to the start of the summit and shortly after, Blair defended a widely reported misinterpretation of the regulation in a press conference. The police department received a government bulletin clarifying the misinterpretation and explaining that the new regulation accorded them no additional power to demand identification outside of the summit perimeter. Blair's spokesperson stated that as of the press conference, Blair was unaware of the clarification. However, Blair did not retract his prior remarks to the press after receiving the bulletin. When interviewed after the summit, Blair confirmed that there was never an extraordinary legal requirement for the public to press